Hi, I'm Dan Kreiness, host of the Leader of Learning podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 185 of the House of EdTech podcast, we are going to talk about collaboration. I'm going to share the responses for the September question of the month about what you are excited for at the start of the school year. We've got our featured content, which is inspired by a listener, as we talk about how to support the use of education technology, and of course, a House of EdTech VIP. Strike up the band. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nesi. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or maybe just good generic time of the day. Welcome to this episode of the podcast. I am delighted that you are here because you could have chosen any one of over or close to 1 million podcasts to listen to, and you have made House of EdTech your choice right now. Thank you very much. If you're a new listener, glad you're checking it out. Hopefully, I will earn your subscription. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. All right, so we've got a jam-packed episode here at the beginning of September. Today I want to talk about how to support the use of education technology. And this topic was inspired from a listener, Scott Chandler, and I will play the audio of his question coming up in just a couple of minutes. But I want you to know that if you are not a school administrator as you listen to this, don't tune out. You might find value in this because one day you might be a school administrator. And if you are a current school administrator, hopefully this continues to inspire you, and maybe you can share this episode with other school leaders to consider what I think is important based on what Scott has asked us. And again, coming up later in this episode, we've got the Just Give It a Try segment where I'm going to feature couple of responses to our September question of the month. And this is a little segment of the show where you get to share your thoughts on a question I've put out into the great unknown that is the internet. So I'm looking forward to sharing those responses and also sharing what the October question of the month is. And of course, we've got the VIP. That's really all the news here. So why don't we dive into this episode's EdTech Recommendation. For this episode's EdTech Recommendation, I want to talk about collaboration. Now, I've previously talked about the 4 C's: creating, collaborating, communicating, and critical thinking. I'll link to those couple of episodes in the show notes out at chrisnesi.com/185. But for this episode's recommendation, I want to focus in on collaboration. In this new era of learning, whether it's 2021 or you're listening to this well into the future, the education world is constantly changing. It's important for educators like you and me and our students to stay connected, to collaborate, and learn, and more than ever, we can do that from anywhere. How we teach and how we learn remotely or virtually, how we share knowledge and collaborating is more critical than ever before. How are you and your students using collaborative spaces to turn ideas and learning into action? couple of benefits to this idea of collaboration, and I want to focus in on collaborative class notes. So, number one, you can collaborate in real time. Number two, you can interconnect the class notes of your students and yourself and other documents. Number three, you can create fully responsive documents. Number four, you can create class notes that are visible to yourself, your students, and your students can share information with each other. That's what the world is about post K-12 education. How do you collaborate and play well with others? So we should be focusing on how we teach our students to collaborate and the environments that we have them collaborate in. And to some degree, based on the platform, you can track the engagement on shared class notes with student-to-student interactivity as well as teacher-to-student interactivity when it comes to collaborative documents. I know recently here at the start of the 2021-2022 school year, one of the updates to Google Docs is that you can now see who has viewed your document. So if you share a document with somebody, you can see who has viewed it, when they have viewed it, and that's not if they edit it. This is just a special window. You can just see the history of who has just looked at it, which is really powerful. Now, how to make your class notes interactive? Well, you can include web links, right? Again, regardless of your platform, you should find a way and you should be able to include hyperlinks in collaborative notes. Whether you're linking to PDFs or you're embedding PDFs or presentations, maybe using a platform like Wakelet to collaborate on class notes, embedding video content from YouTube or Vimeo or another video source. Because remember, it's not about any specific tool or platform. It's what we can do with our tools and these platforms. And again, number four, how you can embed or include other cloud-based documents. Now, of course, there are any multitude of tools. You can use Google Docs. You can use Wakelet. You can use Google Slides. All right. You can use Microsoft Teams. Okay. Microsoft OneNote. You can build these interactive documents to collaborate on how your class interacts with each other. You can also extend this to how you connect and collaborate with your colleagues in your department, in your grade level. All right. One tool that I do want to highlight as part of this recommendation is new for me, and I came across it recently, so I am still kind of playing with it, and it is called BIT, B-I-T, and you can find it at bit.ai, and it's not fully free, so it's freemium. You can use it for free, but bit.ai, and they call it BIT, is a collaborative space where you can... Now, as I was looking at this and putting this segment together, you can use BIT in businesses and all sorts of applications, but the main gist is that you can collaborate and you can embed all types of things into this collaborative space. You can embed Microsoft documents, you can embed YouTube, you can link to Spotify, SoundCloud, Dropbox, Facebook, Google Maps. Okay. It goes on and on and on. But again, it's about adding interactivity. And as I looked at it, it's very Wakelet-like. So if you are a fan of Wakelet, you might be interested in trying this if you haven't tried anything where you can have a better, what I perceive to be a better collaborative space. Maybe BIT will do it for you. So I would love to know what you think of BIT. I would also love to know how you are fostering collaboration in your classroom between you and your students, among your students. And spoiler, that's actually going to come up later when we talk about the question of the month for October. All right. So stay tuned. And if you check out bit.ai, let me know. Go to chrisnessy.com/feedback or shoot me a tweet at Mr. Nessy. And of course, use the hashtag House of EdTech. So collaboration is key, and that's my EdTech recommendation. Now, as I said at the beginning of the episode, we got our featured content today from a listener, and that listener is Scott Chandler. And I will play his message right now.
You have one new message.
Hello, Mr. Nessie. This is Scott Chandler out of Illinois. I love your podcast, I love your guests, and I love the collective message your network sends into education. A lot of the discussions always seem to focus on how individual teachers are articulating technology within the classroom, and it's such a rich conversation. I love to follow every episode. But I'm curious about a little bit bigger picture, the support networks behind those frontline teachers. In other words, how do we create at the school level or district level, an environment that is professionally rich for the application of technology in learning and teaching? In other words, what do we expect out of our administrators, our professional development? What do we expect out of how we vet and garner and gather resources? I love your show. Keep up the great work, and thank you for doing what you do.
Scott, first, thank you for being a listener of the House of EdTech, and thank you for sending in this question, which has inspired this whole episode, basically. And for you who is listening who is not Scott Chandler, you can connect with Scott on Twitter. He is at SLChandler813. That's SLChandler 813. And again, Scott is based out of Illinois. And thank you, Scott. So let's dive in to Scott's questions. The first thing Scott asked us is, how do we create an environment at the school and district level that is professionally rich for the application of technology and learning and teaching? My initial thought is leadership needs to trust their college-educated professional staff. Whether you are a 20-year veteran or you are fresh out of school, you took courses, you passed exams, you got your teaching license, you interviewed, and you were hired. Now, I know in a previous episode, whether it was here or it might have been on Podcast PD, where I talked about how in this profession of education, I can't think of another profession where you are hired based on your potential to succeed, but you are then evaluated on your shortcomings and the things that you are not successful at. I can't think of another profession where that's how you are evaluated. Okay. Now, again, whether we're talking about the 20-year veteran or the fresh out of school new educator, is there value to experience? Absolutely. However, what I think a lot of administrators forget is trust your teachers. Now, is that to say that every administrator everywhere doesn't trust their staff? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Okay. But what is the culture that you are creating if you micromanage a group of adult professionals? Our students don't like when we're got our hands in everything. And in fact, here in the year 2021, 21st century learning, we are told to give our students more freedom to explore and fail forward. We as teachers need to be given that same opportunity, right? And a lot of our professional development stems around what the teachers need to do to improve the experience of the students. It is far and few between, in my experience at least, that the conversation during professional development talks about what do the teachers need. It's always about the students, and I get that. We are here for the students. Who needs to be here for us as teachers? If we go back to things that people like Simon Sinek have said, when we talk about leadership, we can certainly get that leadership chain wrong, right? If you're the superintendent, you need to take care of your district level administrators, the supervisors, curriculum directors, okay, building principals, and then work down, okay? Building principals and department supervisors of academic areas need to take care of the teachers, allowing the teachers to then take care of the students, okay? So if we can improve the organizational structure and how the different levels of a school and district interact with each other, we can change the culture where it is supportive and not gotcha or trying to getcha. So when we're talking about the application of technology, give the teachers the freedom to explore. Ask questions. Seek to understand before being understood. I like to tell my students that the question they should ask most often is why. As an administrator or a school leader, you can also ask those questions. Why is this valuable? Why are you using this? How does it work? Seek to understand before being understood, because you'd be hard-pressed to find, and I know this happens in some places where school leaders still teach to some degree in the classroom. Some districts might even require a supervisor or a vice principal or a principal to teach a section of a class. But that's not happening everywhere. And too often and too quickly, administrators, there's no other way to put it, forget what it means to teach and stand up in a classroom and interact with a group of students. And how you interact with students as an administrator is very different from how a classroom teacher does it on a day in and day out basis. So, what environment are you creating? It has to be one of trust and empowerment. The next question that Scott asks is, what do we expect from our administrators? So, to continue this train of thought, we need administrators to coach, to support, to advise. It can't always be about judgment, right? Most teachers are, I don't want to say deathly afraid, but are fearful and apprehensive about administrators coming into the classroom and seeing what's happening. Personally, I don't care. My door to my classroom is always open or unlocked, right? I'm the teacher who is always sending an email to supervisor, vice principal, principal, curriculum director, superintendent. Here's what's happening in my classroom, not what I am doing or what I am teaching, but here's what's happening with the students. Here's what the students are working on. Here's what they are creating and collaborating and communicating and critically thinking on. Come and see what the students are doing. I don't care who sees it. All right. I chose to be a teacher. I did not choose to win awards. All right. And my next award will be the first award. So that's not the goal. Okay. So what we do need is, again, advice, support, and coaching. If your school or your district doesn't have technology coaches, again, find those people. If you have people in your building, empower them. Don't take advantage of them. Empower them. I'm not quite sure what it means when I say that, because it's not something I have a lot of experience with, right? I am not a tech coach. Again, you see all over the internet, tech coach here, tech coach there, here a coach, there a coach. Everybody's, getting tech coach jobs. And I don't currently work in a place that has that opportunity available. Okay. But there is support. I can be that guy, or you can be that person at your school who supports their colleagues. Again, you don't always need a title to be in a position of leadership, and you don't need a title to help others. But for those that are walking around with a title, what does that title mean to you? Right? Do you just have authority over other people, or do you coach, support, and advise? Are you always judging? Are you asking questions? You should ask a lot of questions. And if you don't know something, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. If you want me to not be afraid to say, I don't know to students, then when you're in a position of leadership, you also can't be afraid to say, I don't know, or let's explore it together. Let's learn it together. Let's find out together. Third question that I pulled from Scott's voicemail. What are our professional development expectations? I think it starts with sandbox time, which I've talked about before. We need time to play. I've attended, and let me know if you have as well, if you've attended a one-day, one-off professional development session and you hear somebody who was in the classroom a long time ago, or they're very recently out of the classroom and they only spent a little time in the classroom, but ultimately you hear about a tool or some technology and then you're expected to immediately use it, which to some degree, that's okay, but you don't really get time to play with it, or you don't get relevant tech training, or you don't get meaningful time to play with a tool. You're just expected to learn it, know it, use it, and off you go. What are the expectations of the PD? Are they realistic expectations? How do we empower the people, and how do we provide time? Maybe your school has professional learning communities, or PLCs, or CPT, common planning time, right? Is that time fully given to teachers to play and talk and discuss and grow professionally, to try things out? Or is every meeting you have with staff and departments fully scripted, and there's no room for actually getting your hands dirty with technology? So what's happening during this time? Is this time even provided? I'm sure in some schools and districts there is no common planning time. You have your monthly faculty meeting and or your department meeting, and that's it. Then you're in your classroom and there's not a lot of time. And let's be honest, while there are a few of us who will talk shop while we eat lunch, sometimes you need a break. So when we're talking about professional development and what the expectations are, teachers need time. We need time to learn. We need time to play. We need time to implement. It's not going to happen overnight. Now, for some people, yeah, I'll raise my hand. It's up. Both hands are up. I'm waving here in the House of EdTech. I can sit in a one-day professional development, hear about a tool, learn about a tool, but then I will go home. I will make time, and I will try it as soon as possible, or as soon as it fits in. But not everybody's like me. You're not like me. You're you. You might be similar to me. You might know people who are like me, but not everybody has that mentality. So let's appeal to the masses. We need sandbox time. We need time. That's the professional development expectation we need. We need time. And the fourth question that I pull from Scott's message, and again, thank you to Scott for submitting it. If you want to submit a question to either talk to me about or have me wax poetic about and discuss here on the show, shoot me an email, feedback@chrisnessy.com, or go to chrisnessy.com/feedback and leave a voice message or send a message in. It's all over the website. But the last question that Scott asks is, how can we better collect or choose resources for instructional use? This made me think, because it's important that we consider other people. Again, not everybody thinks like me. Not everybody is sitting at their computer at night, most nights, looking, exploring, watching videos, doing searches, trying to find resources. Okay? So how can we better collect and choose resources? Well, you have to be willing to look. You have to be willing to ask people what they're using. What are they having success? What are they having success with? Schools and districts need to ask teachers what they need. Ask your teachers what tools they find valuable. Schools and districts need to be willing to invest money. They need to be willing to invest time by piloting things. And you just need to have the mentality of being willing to try, right? Every episode, 184 episodes in, I'll say it at the end of this one again, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. You have to be willing to try. School leaders need to be willing to try to change the mentality, try to impact the culture, empower the people that are doing this good work. Let them lead professional development. Give them time to run a CPT or a PLC or a ABC. You fill in the letters, you know your acronym. So those are, I guess, for the first time, my real thoughts on how to do this. And again, thank you to Scott for bringing this question about how to support the use of education technology in our schools and classrooms. All right. If you want to connect with Scott and continue the conversation with Scott and myself, he is on Twitter. He is again at SLChandler813. And if you've got a question, you can send it my way and we can explore it on a future episode. And if you have thoughts and ideas that maybe I didn't consider, let's learn and grow together and send them my way. chrisnessy.com/feedback. Feedback@chrisnessy.com is the email. Let me know your thoughts. And maybe we can continue this conversation in a future episode. Maybe this winds up being part 1, and in the future, we'll have part 2. Now it's time for Just Give It a Try. This is another part of the show where I turn the reins and the wheel over to you. And I asked a question in August that I wanted to include here in September. And the question of the month, we'll call it that, the question of the month as I'm trying something new, was what are you or your students excited about trying or doing that's different here at the start of the school year? And we got a couple of responses that I will share. And then I'm going to give you the question of the month that I will share at the beginning of October. So I think this will work out time-wise. So let's check out the responses to our September question, and then I will give you our October question. First up, we have two-time guest of the podcast and regular contributor to the annual House of EdTech Smackdown, Nate Nagel. Take it away, Nate.
Hey, Chris, Nate Nagel here. And one thing I'm really looking forward to giving a try this year is a app that's mainly Mac, but they do have a web version, but it's called Craft. And essentially, it's a note-taking, collection, exporting, whatever. I often find that I need a way to better organize my thoughts and especially notes for students. I kind of tend to rely on them to keep notes of everything. And I'm going to really try to provide them with a clear, concise way of keeping class notes together so they can study or refer back to them or just have that resource to go on in case either I'm not there or they just want to learn more. So Craft is a really powerful tool. Again, it's mainly a Mac-based thing, but it works with any Apple device, and they do have a web version. And it's also free for educators right now on their website. You can find it at craft.do, and I'm really looking forward to exploring it and playing with it and seeing everything it can do. The feature that I'm most looking forward to is it has a PDF export where you can kind of organize all of your notes in a certain area. You can put them all together and export it as a beautiful PDF very quickly and very easily. And again, it's free.
Thank you, Mr. Nagel. Always a pleasure to hear your voice. And I didn't want to spoil what Nate said as I had put together the EdTech recommendation and talked about collaboration. But now you can add craft.do to your list of potential environments and tools for collaboration. And I will include a link to craft.do in the show notes out at chrisnessy.com/185, along with Nate's Twitter handle if you're not already connected. Next up, one of my podcaster and educator friends, Craig, from the Ingles podcast. Craig, what do you got?
Hey Chris, it's Craig here from inglespodcast.com. I thought I'd chime in with my answer to your question of the month, which is what am I looking forward to trying in the coming months in my classroom or school? Well, I won't be trying this in my school because I've been made redundant. I lost my job after 24 years of teaching English as a second language over here in Spain. And sadly, my school had to cut 35% of its teaching staff, but it's all good. I'm really feeling okay about the change. I feel like I need the change. And what I've decided to do is to take my classroom online. And I'm really looking forward to the challenge of creating online courses for my students. I'm excited about reaching more students. And thanks to our podcast that's been going for quite a few years, I have a base of students from all over the world, and I'm very excited to see how I can adapt my teaching to help them improve how they speak and pass exams and get jobs and take their English up to different exam levels, etc. So I'm really excited about that. I'm trying to focus on creating the content that I need for the course and not get distracted by course hosting platforms and software, etc. So I'm trying to focus down to create the material first. And that's basically what I'm excited about. Thanks for all you do, Chris. I really enjoy your podcast and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Craig. And again, for you who's listening, if you work with ESL students or ELL, depending on the term that you and your school uses, go check out Craig's podcast, the Ingles Podcast. And Craig, while I'm sorry to hear that after 24 years that you're not at the school that you were at, but you're still going to get to impact students again through the use of your podcast and the use of the exciting courses that you will create to continue to help students. And please keep us posted about how that's going, maybe some of the tools that you're using. And if you ever have any questions, please shoot them our way here at the House of EdTech. I appreciate you listening, and it's always great to hear your voice. And as a side note, in 2018, because Craig is a podcaster, we got to meet after years of interacting online. We got to meet at Podcast Movement 2018 in Philadelphia. And Craig, I hope that we get to see each other again soon. And again, thank you for sending in your voice message for the September question of the month. Now, before we move forward, let's talk about the October question of the month. I think this will work out really nice. So first, I will need your responses to this question by Friday, September 24th. So that way I can include it in the October 3rd episode. And I think this is going to work out nice. So by Friday, September 24th, however you want to get me your response to the following question will be appreciated. And hopefully we can get a couple of more responses and really hear what you're all thinking. So what are your thoughts? Let's read the right question, Mr. Nessie. What are yours and your students' favorite tool for collaboration and why? And I only want you to pick one. So we talked about a couple. There are plenty out there. So the question of the month for October, what are yours and your students' favorite tool for collaboration? Maybe there's one that you use that's separate for you. Maybe there's one that your students prefer. Let's find out and see what's working for everybody and let us know why. Again, get me your response to that question by Friday, September 24th, and we can continue on with our new question of the month. Just give it a try. And of course, no episode of the House of EdTech is complete without a VIP. And this young lady is somebody who I recently connected with on Twitter, and I can't help but be excited to be connected with her because she is still learning to be a teacher. I want to introduce you quickly to Hillary Umholtz. She is at Hillary Umholtz on Twitter, and I will link to that out at chrisnessy.com/185, and it's also in your podcast player right now, so you can just click on it and follow Hillary, which you should do. She's new. She's a passionate future educator. She is currently attending Tarleton State. She will be a part of the class of 2022, and she is pursuing a degree in her career in elementary education, ESL, and she's also going to be certified in special education at all levels. So connect with Hillary, help grow her personal learning network, and congratulations to you, Hillary. You are a House of EdTech VIP. Thanks for listening to this episode 185 of the House of EdTech podcast. Thank you again to Scott Chandler for sending in that great voicemail that inspired our featured content today. Thank you also to Nate and Craig for jumping in on the revamped Just Give It a Try segment. Again, get the responses to the new question by September 24th. If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on how to support the use of education technology. For links to the resources and everything that I shared in this episode, you can go out to the show notes. That's on my website, chrisnessy.com/185. And if you fill in the episode number, you can get to the show notes for any episode of the podcast. If you want to send feedback, I'll beat this like a dead horse. Go to chrisnessy.com/feedback. If you enjoy the podcast, thank you so much. If you're listening right now, you enjoy the podcast, and I appreciate that. The first thing you can do to show your support and your love for the show, And if you do nothing else, tell somebody else about the House of EdTech. Tweet about it, share it on Instagram. Is there a quote? Is there something that I said that you would really like to put out into the world? Go ahead, go to Adobe Spark or Photoshop or your graphic tool and put my words out there in a graphic. I would love to see more of that. The other thing you can do is you could also become an awesome supporter. The Awesome Supporter program is powered by Patreon.com. Patreon allows a consumer of content like you to support a creator of content like me. So, if you got value from this episode and my content and you would like to support it, you can go to chrisnessy.com/awesome and become an awesome supporter. Thank you to my current awesome supporters, Anthony Arnault from the STEM Class Podcast, Dan Gallagher from gallaghertech.edublogs.org, Carlos Garza, host of the Aced Tech Podcast, Peggy George at pgeorge on Twitter, Jeff Herb at Jeff Herb, Mike Messner at Messner_Mike on Twitter, Matt Miller, that's right, Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook. Thank you, Matt. JP Prezavento from jpprez.com, Patty Reefus at PGR Teaches, Lori Simpson at North L. Simpson, and of course Kyle Wilcox at Level Up EdTech. The next episode of the podcast is episode 186, and it comes your way on September 19th, 2021. Until next time, thanks for learning with me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.